You just checked your phone for a message that isn't there. Not an email, not a work update. You were checking to see what someone said about someone else. Maybe it was a text from a friend, maybe it was a comment thread, maybe it was just wondering what happened after that argument at dinner last night. You call this a bad habit, but the real answer is far stranger. That urge is not a flaw in your character. It is one of the oldest survival tools your species ever built. For most of human history, there was no news, no headlines, no updates, no feeds. There was only the person next to you and what they knew that you didn't, who could be trusted, who had taken more than their share, who had helped a stranger and who had betrayed one. That information was not entertainment. It was the difference between living safely inside a group and being pushed out of it alone. Think about what being alone actually meant back then. No tools you didn't make yourself, no protection you didn't provide yourself, no food you didn't find yourself. Humans are not fast, they are not strong compared to the predators around them. Their real weapon was each other, and the only way to know who was safe to depend on was to talk about them when they weren't in the room. This is where the story gets strange. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent years studying primates and noticed something odd. Chimpanzees, baboons, and other social primates spend enormous amounts of time grooming each other, picking through fur, removing parasites. It looks hygienic. It isn't really. Social currency. Grooming builds trust and trust builds alliances and alliances keep an individual alive inside a group. But grooming has a limit. You can only groom one animal at a time. As primate groups grow larger, the amount of time needed to personally groom every important ally becomes impossible. Something had to replace it. Dunbar's theory is that language did. Talking, he argued, is grooming at a distance. You can groom several people at once with your voice while your hands stay free to do something else. And what did that early talking mostly consist of? Not philosophy, not hunting strategy. People talking about people, who did what, who can be trusted, gossip. Dunbar also proposed that human brain size correlates with group size, suggesting a cognitive ceiling on how many stable relationships one brain can track, often cited as roughly 150 people, though that exact number is still debated among researchers. What isn't debated is the underlying pressure. The bigger your social world gets, the more information you need just to survive inside it. Gossip became the tool that let human groups scale far beyond what grooming alone could manage. Here's the part that should make you rethink every time you felt guilty about a conversation. In 2014, the psychologist Matthew Feinberg and his colleagues ran an experiment that has become one of the more cited findings in this field. They had participants play economic games where individuals could act generously or selfishly. When people were allowed to gossip about who had behaved badly, group cooperation went up. Selfish behavior dropped. People who had been called out through gossip and even briefly excluded by the group often adjusted their behavior afterward, cooperating at levels similar to everyone else. Gossip wasn't corroding trust in that setting. It was enforcing it. That reframes the whole picture, doesn't it? You've been taught your whole life that gossip is petty, something small-minded people do, something you should rise above. But evolutionarily, gossip was never about pettiness. It was law enforcement before there were laws. It was the credit score before there were credit scores. It let a group of humans who had never even met a stranger from 3 villages over know, within minutes of that stranger arriving, whether he could be trusted near their children or their food stores. And it wasn't just about catching cheaters. Psychologist Frank McAndrew has spent decades studying why people are so consistently drawn to information about others, especially high-status others. His research found that people rank stories about people of their own age and social standing as more interesting than stories about strangers who don't affect their world. You care less about the personal drama of someone irrelevant to your life and much more about the personal drama of your coworker, your neighbor, your friend's ex. That isn't randomness. It's a targeting system. Your brain evolved to prioritize information about the people whose behavior could actually help or hurt you. This is also why celebrity gossip feels so oddly compelling even though you will never meet these people. Your brain didn't evolve for a world with television and social media. It evolved for small bands of maybe a few dozen people, where everyone you saw regularly on a screen-sized mental map was someone who mattered to your survival. Today, celebrities occupy that same mental slot. Your ancient tracking system can't tell the difference between a person who lives in your village and a person who lives on your screen. It treats both as social information worth remembering. Now here's the twist most people never think about. Gossip isn't just about protecting the group from bad actors, it's about protecting your own position inside it. Every time you share information about someone else, you're also signaling something about yourself. That you notice details, that you understand social rules, that you're paying attention to who deserves trust and who doesn't. In small ancestral groups, being seen as socially perceptive wasn't a personality trait, it was a survival skill. People who correctly tracked alliances lived longer, ate better, and had more support in hard times than people who didn't. So the next time you feel a flicker of guilt for wanting to know what happened or for being the one who tells someone else, consider what you're actually doing. You are running software that is hundreds of thousands of years old. Software built for a world with no police, no contracts, no background checks, no online reviews. In that world, the only protection you had against being exploited by someone stronger or more deceptive than you was other people's memories of what that person had done before. Passed along mouth to ear, exactly the way you're passing along information right now. This doesn't mean every act of gossip is noble. Plenty of it is cruel, inaccurate, or designed to hurt rather than protect. Evolution built the impulse. It didn't build a filter for using it responsibly. That part is still yours to manage, but understanding where the impulse comes from changes how you might judge yourself and others for having it. Consider what happens in a workplace with no gossip at all. It sounds like a utopia. No whispering, no rumors, no water cooler talk about who's difficult to work with. But strip that information flow out of a group and something worse tends to fill the space. People can no longer warn each other about a manager who takes credit for other people's work, or a colleague who quietly undermines teammates behind closed doors. Without informal reputation tracking, the only way to learn that someone is untrustworthy is to be harmed by them directly, yourself, from scratch. Gossip in its functional form is a shortcut that spares you that cost. It lets you inherit other people's hard-won knowledge instead of relearning every danger the group has already identified. This also explains why gossip spreads faster and sticks harder than almost any other kind of information. Try to remember the last piece of neutral trivia someone told you. Now try to remember the last piece of information you heard about someone breaking an unspoken social rule. The second one is almost certainly still vivid. Your memory isn't broken, it's prioritizing. Information about who violated trust gets tagged as urgent because in the ancestral environment, urgent was exactly what it was. Forgetting who couldn't be trusted wasn't a minor slip. It could mean welcoming a thief back into your camp or trusting your children with someone who had already proven unreliable. There's another layer to this that rarely gets discussed. Gossip doesn't just police bad behavior. It also builds something researchers call social capital, a kind of invisible currency made of trust and obligation that accumulates between people over time. When you share a piece of gossip with someone, you're implicitly saying, "I trust you enough to give you this." That act itself deepens the relationship, regardless of what the gossip is actually about. This is part of why gossip so often happens between people who are already close. It isn't random chatter. It's a bonding ritual disguised as small talk, doing for modern relationships exactly what Dunbar argued vocal language once did for early human groups, scaling past what physical grooming could sustain. There's a reason children start gossiping almost as soon as they can talk in full sentences, and it isn't because someone taught them to. Watch a group of 8-year-olds on a playground and you'll hear a near-constant stream of who did what, who broke a rule, who said something mean to whom. Adults often try to correct this, treating it as a bad habit to unlearn. But developmental researchers have long noted that this early social reporting is how children map the rules of their group before they're old enough to reason abstractly about fairness or trust. They're not being petty. They're building the same reputation tracking database every human group has relied on, just starting earlier than most adults remember starting themselves. By the time you're old enough to feel embarrassed about gossiping, the wiring underneath it has already been running for years. It's worth asking then why gossip carries such a bad reputation today when its underlying function seems so useful. Part of the answer is scale. In a group of 30 people, gossip circulates quickly, corrects itself quickly, and mostly targets people everyone can verify claims about firsthand. In a world of billions of strangers connected by screens, that same instinct gets applied to information that spreads faster than it can be checked, about people none of the participants have ever met. The tool didn't change. The environment it operates in became almost unrecognizable. Your brain still runs the ancestral version of this software, built for a small, checkable world, inside a modern environment built for exactly the opposite. You checked your phone for a message that isn't there. It was never really about that missing message. It was about staying inside the group that has kept people like you alive for longer than history has been written down.